Well, I don't think it was a big surprise as to what the presidents voted today. Certainly, with the NCAA coming out yesterday, canceling fall championships, as all of you know and been tracking, that most of those sports, not most, all of those sports dip below 50%. So therefore, it was needed to cancel the sports and in the fall, and we're looking forward to moving those sports to the spring to have those championships, and hopefully the virus will allow us to have those championships in the spring. I'm disappointed for our kids and our student athletes, but hopefully we'll be able to play in the spring, and they have a chance to play for conference and NCAA championships. So I'll open it up.
I just think the most curious thing about that, it's the volleyball situation kind of comes into mind. You guys reduce your staff there to your kind of combined staffs there with both beach and indoor to 3 people, and now those 3 people are going to be dependent on to coach 2 teams in the spring, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. Well, of course, when we made that decision, we weren't exactly sure how that was going to work out between the fall and the spring. But yeah, that's the way it worked out, and it will be. Let's just say this: for all of our fall and spring, and especially the spring, it's going to be a very busy spring, right? We probably don't have enough staff to be able to handle all those events that are going to be on campus. We're going to have to, and you guys don't have enough people to cover it. So it'll be interesting how that works. But we. We're going to have to do it. We could have 8 or 9. I mean, I don't think that'll happen, but we could have 8 or 9 events on a weekend or a week of, depending on how it all shakes out between, the soccers and the volleyball and football and, just all of them. So it's going to be a very, very busy spring.
Is there any plan like football to have exhibitions or any kind of games practices before the end of the year for these fall sports?
I don't think exhibitions for football, Chad. I think we're trying to schedule games for the fall for football, and then it's certainly our intent to be able to on the fall sports with the rule what the Valley has that we can have some contest in the fall non-conference for those sports. So again, volleyball, soccer's, golf's. If we can find games or matches to be able to play non-conference, we will try to do that.
I know you've said that you haven't talked about the basketballs yet. Just kind of looking at some other conferences, they've been postponing to January 1st and taking out some non-conference basketball. I'm assuming that never even came up with you guys.
Not yet, Wyatt. We had a tough enough time trying to get to this point. We just, we did briefly mention it in the last 2 meetings that we had that we certainly need to escalate our efforts in thinking about what's going to happen with basketball. And I think now that we've got fall somewhat behind us, that we can fully concentrate on basketballs. And I know there's been a lot of stuff out there. I think the Pac-12 indicated they weren't going to play at all in the fall. I don't know who else had indicated that, but certainly the Pac-12. So we're not there yet. It's way too premature to talk about non-conference for basketball. But I know there's a lot of talk nationally on how we're going to get basketball in. I do think that we will get basketball in. At least I'm very hopeful. I don't have anything I'm hiding back or holding back, that I think I know it can happen and it will happen, but I know it's everybody's intent nationally to get basketball in.
Just as a point of information, you may have mentioned it before, but the decision, while it was expected, was it unanimous, or was there anyone in the Missouri Valley that was thinking otherwise?
It wasn't unanimous, but it was very close to unanimous. That's about all I can go. I'm not going to give individual schools and how they voted, but it was as close to unanimous as you can get.
You guys kind of seem like you could, just by the way you guys have talked a little bit, just with your testing protocols and everything, you guys seem to be like, you seem like that you would have been comfortable with playing in the fall if you were asked to, just by the protocols and how everything's kind of gone here early on. Is that fair?
Well, I think we might have been one of the more progressive schools. Let me put it that way. I have the reason why we're even considering and doing games and matches or competitions in the fall is because, one, geographically, I think we're different than maybe some other of our conference companions. I mean, Missouri's different than Illinois. Missouri's different than fill in the blank. So we're just geographically, we're not at some of the places where everybody else is. Two, we're able to test, and we're able to test the way the NCAA is asked to test. And again, those are recommended guidelines. They're not things that are forced to, but we have been able to do what they've recommended and to the fullest. And EKGs in the back end, PCR testing in the front end, the quantity of which we're supposed to test. Even with Oklahoma and their standards, and in terms of the Big 12, we have been able to do that. I can tell you that not everybody has been fortunate to be able to do that. So I think that's probably why we've been a little bit more progressive. And I don't disagree with you necessarily, Wyatt, but I certainly agree with the decision not to have fall. But certainly I think we have been a little bit more, I guess, lucky. Maybe that's the way to go. And I don't know if we've done anything differently as a society in our county and our state, but we've certainly been a little bit more lucky, I think, in terms of how the virus has hit us.
I'll ask you about the numbers again, like I do every week. Do you know what your latest numbers are with positives and tests for an update from the last time we talked?
I don't. I'm sorry, Dan. I don't have the numbers for this week. I don't have those from the last time we spoke, but I'm sure we'll have them over the weekend.
I can get those to you.
Okay, if you can. The other thing I was going to say is you mentioned EKG. Is that something new that you guys are looking forward to doing with the guys?
No, that's not new. That's something the NCAA requested, so we've been doing that.
Has Missouri State had to think of suspending a sport this year, or have you heard of any Valley schools maybe having to suspend a sport for 2021?
No, I haven't heard of anybody suspending the sport. No, not at all. And Chad, I wouldn't necessarily say you'd have to suspend it. Well, I guess that's true. Suspend for a certain period of time would be probably a better way of putting it. But when I initially thought of your question, it was like it was done and would be over with. And again, I think, if you are test positive, it's 10 days, and certainly quarantine is 14 days. So I don't think that would, I don't think that would rule out your sport necessarily. Would you want to slow it down and I guess suspend is the right word if you wanted to stay out for a week and not do it, but that would certainly be the case. But we've had positive tests. I don't know if we would necessarily, if we have to do it, but maybe we chose to do it. But I don't think there's not a certain number, I guess is what I'm saying, is that would require us to just shut the whole thing down.
Anything else? Do you have a football games for the fall?
Sorry, Dan, I just heard football games for the fall. I assume, do we have more football games for the fall? No, we do not. We're still working on it. We're getting close.
There's been some reports on college basketball teams trying to look into bubble atmospheres. It's got to be so costly. Is that in any way Missouri State can be involved in anything like that?
We have not talked about that from a conference perspective. I just, I don't know how we could do it, Wyatt. I think the numbers would be too high. But if someone came with a plan, we'd certainly look at it. I know we would look at it as a conference, but I just don't know if the numbers work for us. And I have not heard of a plan or even an inkling of a plan of anybody wanting to do that. But we'll be talking about it more here in the recent coming up week. So we'll see. Maybe somebody will have a plan for that. But it'd be nice if. Again, I probably shouldn't say this. Rick's going to probably jump out of the Zoom there, but if we, it would be great if we had enough of the resources to maybe go to St. Louis and stay in St. Louis for, let's say we didn't play until conference. We didn't play non-conference. Again, all hypothetical. Don't say Moats said this. I'm just saying It's like everybody else. You're sitting at the bar talking, right? That's what all the rest of these guys are doing. So maybe you could do it in St. Louis if you found practice courts and had a place to play. You stay there to the conference tournament, and then you could play the conference tournament. That would be great. And I think, that may make sense, but I just don't know how realistic that is. And it's just different. I think college is different in being able to do that. And we certainly don't have the resources. I could see it being done for the March Madness, for the championship. I could see something like that happening. If you went to a certain site and you had, maybe you had 16 teams, you could find 16 hotels and enough courts to do it. You might be able to pull that off. Could happen.
Kyle, I'm curious, just personally for you, it's been a crazy stretch of time here. I mean, all the things that you're having to juggle, from keeping that Oklahoma game alive to now looking ahead. You're talking about even looking to basketball while also trying to set up more fall games for football. Just what's this process been like for you, and how challenging has it been? So many unprecedented things you're juggling at the same time.
Well, I can tell you, we've had a tremendous amount of help from staff. And when I say staff, I mean our staff, but also the Missouri Valley Conference. Patty and Greg and Doug have been, they're in countless meetings and countless committees. We're in committees. So we're trying to get as much feedback and information as we can to report back to all the schools and the membership. So the important thing is that we be informed, and that's what we are doing. And I know that the staff has done a great job of informing everyone, and that's all we can do. And I think that the most frustrating part is the information getting back to our student athletes, because I think they think we're holding out on them, or we're not giving them the information that they necessarily need. And that's frustrating, because I think we pride ourselves on being, open and transparent with them, but we don't have all the answers. And I'm not one to talk hypotheticals. I don't like doing that. And if you tell them something and it changes in an hour, which it could be an hour or a day, then I think that's unfair. It only confuses them. So we try to only give them absolutes. And in this situation, that's been the most frustrating part, is we can't deal in absolutes. And because it's such a new situation, and, the NCAA doesn't know, and it's just been really difficult to get answers, and the appropriate answers in a timely fashion.
What do you think has, for you, been the most challenging part of this whole thing? Is it the communication, or is it, just wanting to have a season and not being able to? Just for you, what's been the most difficult part of this process?
I think the most difficult part is that we just, we haven't made a whole lot of progress with the virus itself. And again, that's not me. I have nothing to do with it. I was just hoping by March that we as a society would be a little bit further along. So that didn't happen. That's frustrating, because it's out of your control. But we have put and spent a tremendous amount of time in protocols and guidelines, and trying to figure out how we can do this to make it safe for our student athletes. And I think the most frustrating part, in addition to the frustration of the virus itself, is you do all that, and then you get to the point where you can't use them. So you spend a tremendous amount of time to make sure you can get it with the student athletes, and then you're not able to do it, or at least as much as you want to do it. Okay. We certainly are doing some of it, but it's modified. And that's the frustrating part, is a tremendous amount of time and effort planning on a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people, not just me, a lot of people, and then not being able to follow through and get it done. And that's where I hope we can, do more. And I'm hoping the spring allows us to do more.
You mentioned, oh, sorry, Wyatt, you go ahead.
Bobby said he didn't think you were getting that much sleep. Just how much sleep have you been getting? And I saw the Oklahoma AD was very complimentary of you today. What was that just having that relationship and just kind of maintaining that Oklahoma game, when it seemed like they might have wanted a school that could have boosted their college football playoff resume.
Well, again, I've said this numerous times. Joe and I go back in my days when I was at Kentucky, and Joe was the marketing director at Mizzou, and we were involved in a fundraising marketing symposium that my boss put on, and that's how I got to know Joe. And Joe was also one of the first marketing people to get an athletic director's job, and usually that comes from a former coach or It doesn't come from the marketing side. You don't get a lot of ADs from the marketing side, at least back then. And Joe's been, good gracious, Joe's been the AD for, I don't know, 25 years maybe. I don't know how long he's been there, but so he was one of the first. So he was someone always that I admired and looked up to, because I thought, he did it the right way. So we kept in contact, even though we didn't play that much, certainly in basketballs or football. But I always, every year when we had an opening coming up in our football schedule, I would call and see if they would have an interest. And again, sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And 3 or 4 years ago, they said, hey, you know what, we do. So I think that part of the relationship is probably why we got a chance to play Oklahoma. I don't know that. You'd have to ask Joe, but certainly it was something that I felt like it was great for our student athletes, great for our fans to play, one of the most storied programs in the country. And I think that experience is a good one. Now, certainly it's going to be, modified and a little bit different when we go there, but it's certainly going to be a great experience. And I hope, in the next 3 or 4 weeks that it happens. We got to get to the finish line. But to answer your original question, I don't sleep very well to begin with. So I don't worry about it too much, but if I think of something, I'm going to text it when I think about it or write it down. So that means it may be at 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe, whatever it may be. I don't think I've had a full 5 hours straight of sleep for a long, long time. And I don't know if it's because of this or just because I don't sleep very well, but I don't worry about it too much.
You had mentioned before that you had wished and thought that back in March that we would be in a better spot come fall. Knowing that and looking back on that, does that impact now how you're going to kind of plan and how the Valley will plan moving forward, looking at winter sports?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think, that's a really good question. We talked a lot about that, not specifically all the issues about basketball, but just the timing of how things were done. I think you're going to find, at least moving forward with basketball, that will be a little bit more definitive about what we're going to do at an earlier time. I don't think we're going to wait to the last minute. And again, I think that's just the discussion we've had amongst ADs and amongst staff. And I think the other thing too that's different, basketball's different than football because the NCAA doesn't control FBS football. So you have to wait on the Power Five to make that decision, and everybody else waited. With basketball, the NCAA does control basketball. So I think you'll have a little bit better understanding, they will, and it'll be more definitive because they control all of it. And I think that's been the big hang up. And a lot of people I don't think understand that or know that. They're separate. And that's been very difficult, I think, for the NCAA, and maybe they haven't done a great job of monitoring that and managing that. But that's the difference. And I think it'll be better moving forward with basketball.
Kyle, just another question. You're going to get your athletes that you've been able to kind of keep separate. They're going to start mixing with students now next week. Any concerns with that populations kind of mixing now?
Sure. It's going to be a big concern. I think it's probably our number one worry going into next week is that. And, again, we've talked to our student athletes. I think they understand since we started this process in June how important it is to be disciplined and do the right thing. I'm not expecting them to be, housed up and not come out at all and be hermits, but they're going to have to be smart, wear their mask. Maybe they don't socialize downtown as much as they normally do, or whatever they do. But I'm just saying they know they're going to have to be smart in what they do. And but certainly the risk of going back to school and being seated in class and having 20,000 people and more in the community is going to be more of a risk, not only for our student athletes, but for everybody.
Kyle, going back to football, is there like a time frame for when the Valley season will be? Are we looking at like a January through March or a March through June? And also, is there anything new about the FCS postseason as far as how many teams and maybe when that would be? And if it would be maybe all the neutral site or kind of just what are you hearing?
Yeah, I think you try to start with when the national championship is going to be, and then you work backwards. So, in some of our discussions, again, nothing's for sure yet. We're still meeting, and we've met a couple times during the last couple of weeks, and going to meet again next week. But we're looking at, trying to look at somewhere in that mid-May as a national championship, and then work your way back depending on what the bracket size is. That's still to be determined. So, you're looking probably, Chad, at a late February, early March start. Again, if you had 8 games in your regular season. So if you push that back to when football would start, you're looking at late January, right? If you give them a month. So I think, that's, again, don't hold me to all that, but that's kind of the time frame that you're looking at to be able to start football late, January, and then start late February and early March.
Looking at a report that just came in here, there are NCAA bylaws that don't allow for split seasons, and you having to get waivers. Is there any concern with that at all?
Well, I'm not so worried about it. I think the bigger issue, Wyatt, is, and we as a committee are going to have to determine this, is the football games that you play in the fall count for selection criteria for the championship. So that hasn't been determined yet. So there is, the committee actually will make that determination. So that is on our docket to discuss, and it'll be an interesting conversation, I'm sure.
Everybody good? All right, Kyle, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
I have one question, if I may, please. I heard, Rick, you might have told me, the wiffle ball, was it 27-1? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, our pitcher's down with COVID, and bad time.
Oh, listen to these excuses. Never mind, I won't say that. Anyway, are you the general manager? Are you the manager? Obviously, you're not the pitcher, right?
I'm the manager. I had to pitch a little bit in that game. Didn't go well. You got to have good pitchers.
All right, I'll leave you all with that. 27-1.
27-1, yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you all.
Thanks.